Welcome to Beats on Bytes. My name's Kurt Wilson, and today we're talking about technology and music. The first recording device, you'd say, was wax cylinders. Edison had cylinders covered in wax. A needle would carve into the wax the performance or whatever it was. They were actually developed to capture the best speeches in the world. Edison had this idea that he wanted to create a library and people would collect the great speeches of the time. Soon, people started wanting to record bands. Now, different than today, where you've got a microphone on each instrument, you've got a microphone on the kick drum, a microphone on the snare, overhead microphones on all the drums, and then each instrument has their own microphone. This was one horn going into a needle that would carve on the wax, and that would be how you created that documentation of that performance. So the challenge with that is that you could only create as many copies of that song and that performance, that specific performance, as you had machines that could carve into the wax. So you had the horn facing the band, and here you had to place the band in such a way that the louder instruments had to be farther back so that there would be some sort of balance going to that needle that would then carve the wax. And of course, you and I both know, the audio quality of that wax recording being played back with a needle projecting out of that horn was not great. We've all heard the old silent movies with some of the soundtrack music. That sounds a little bit thin as far as the bass timbres. That's what was going on. That's all they had. So some things had to change. Musical instruments were actually edited and shaped so that they would work best in that medium. You really didn't have the frequency response on a kick drum, so you would have something a lot lighter. The drummers were encouraged to play woodblocks or tambourines or things like that so that the higher frequency register that would transfer well onto the needle and the wax. The Victor Talking Machine Company created a machine that could record a disc. And that is the beginning of the phonograph. Now in 1915, Edison also created, it was called the diamond disc. The problem was that they were proprietary, so that one disc couldn't be played on another company's disc. Something we continue to not learn from. When you look at the tale of the Beta versus the VHS, those kind of things, where you've got companies vying for the technology that will set them as the standard, as opposed to creating something that works together so that companies can share and grow and not spend so much time reinventing the wheel. But this is what we do. This is what business does. This is how business drives technology, and technology drives art in a sense. Think about it. When the Beatles came out, it was a time where stereo was a new format. And so many of their hits, all of their hits, were first recorded in mono, and it was almost a novelty to create a stereo version of that. And if you listen to some of the earlier Beatles songs, you'll have a lot of the instruments on one channel of the stereo coming through, and then voices and different instruments on the other. Very radical. It wasn't meant for a immersive experience where a lot of the technology today is not so precious, and people have understood they want to immerse you into experiencing the song and the fact that you've got the drums spread out over two speakers and those kind of things. It was, look at what we're doing. We're showing you stereo. So we've got this over here, we've got this over there, and it's fun because you can actually turn off one side and hear all the background vocals. And it's fascinating to hear those kind of things. It's not the immersive experience that it is today, though, as far as what stereo has grown up to be and matured to be. The early phonograph discs had the ability that you could record yourself. So somebody could buy the disc machine and record themselves. And very early on, the manufacturers took that feature away. They wanted to sell you discs from professional musicians that they could then reap the rewards from as far as financial rewards. So very, very similar to like the DAT issue that we had several years ago, well, in the 80s and 90s, where DAT was a great format. Digital recording to tape and virtually soundless as far as tape hiss and things like that. And the recording industry got involved saying that this was a bad thing because there would be no degradation from copies, and so there would be no reason for people to buy the legitimate discs or tapes or whatever that was being produced by the record industry, and they would just simply make their own copies, sell them to friends, do whatever. It would be the death of the music industry. Very much like every conversation with new technology that happens, there's constantly this fear that comes from the recording industry that it will be abused and they won't get their money. In the 1920s, radio became the way that a lot of people listened and enjoyed music. Now, how that would happen, you would have a band go into a radio station and perform live. Now, the challenge with that is that there wasn't tapes or a way to capture that and save it for later performance or for distribution or for sale or for anything. It was live on the radio. It was immediate and it disappeared. No way to capture it, no way to monetize it, and no way to archive it. In 1925, the acoustic horn for the Victor talking machines were replaced by electric microphones. Now with the addition of the electric microphones, the frequency response increased by 2.5 octaves as far as what could be pressed to phonographs. That's a huge difference. And consequently, that was the audio quality that people demanded of the time. Much more realistic, much more enjoyable, much more dynamic. Also with the electric microphone, you had the softer, more diverse recordings that were possible. So now you could have the vocalist, you could actually hear it above the band. And the age of the crooner began. So Bing Crosby and later Frank Sinatra, who were masters of the richness and the intimacy that before then was not even possible. In 1927, The Jazz Singer, the first talkie movie, came out. And that was a milestone as far as syncing sound to image, and movies then became joined at the hip forevermore. And that was the beginning of it all. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe, and make sure you hit the notification bell so I can let you know when I've got more content coming up. And thanks so much for being here. Beats on Bytes, Kurt Wilson. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much.